Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. It's me, Niall. Delighted to be joined this evening by Elliot Stott. We're here with a bit of an unexpected reaction this evening. Not one we kind of hoped that we'd have to make, but the WBC Super Lightweight champion Subriel Matias has returned a positive VADA test for the performance-enhancing drug Ostarine. Yeah, bad news. That we didn't want to be kind of chatting about this evening, Elliot, but of course it's, big news this, especially as his title defense against the UK's Dalton Smith is just around the corner on January 10th. So that fight now in serious jeopardy, following this breaking news this evening, which is a real shame, to be honest with you. But yeah, let's jump straight into it. What are your thoughts on this, seeing this news this evening?
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. Now, good to speak to you, but wish it was in different circumstances. In some ways, it's just another day in the sport. I think that, I think that there are a lot of fighters out there maybe taking these substances. It's just a case of who's getting caught and when. It's a shame when it's when it's for the WBC world title in what was going to be really the first big fight of 2026 as well. So it was one that a lot of people were looking forward to. January can sometimes be a quiet month for boxing, so it's a real shame. But my thoughts are with Dalton Smith. Really, you can imagine he's in the first half, the middle of the kind of hardest camp of his life. He's was preparing to kind of not have a Christmas, to fight for that world title, and now he's probably in a position where you don't know if the fight's going to happen at all. And if it does happen, who are you going to be fighting on January the 10th? So my thoughts are with Dalton Smith, and I hope that this gets sorted out soon.
Yeah, it's such a shame. It really is. But as you said, and I think you hit the nail on the head, unfortunately, in that it's just another day at the office for boxing. It's not kind of long before bad news comes around the corner these days in this sport. So yeah, such a shame. But as we were kind of both said, like it was a fight I was really looking forward to. Dalton Smith getting his chance, but I think, stylistically, I think it was a really fan-friendly fight. It was one to kind of kickstart the new year with a bang. But yeah, as you say, it's just, Subriel Matias might be the tip of the iceberg, really, in terms of,
Yeah,
who's getting caught on these things and who's not. And we've had the Conor Ben kind of conversations after the past week or so, but yeah, it's such a shame. And of course, according to reports, he has 10 days now, I believe, to request testing for his B sample. If that comes back positive, it looks like he will be stripped of that title, which would be a big shame because he's a real fan friendly fighter, fun style. But it has to call into questions now. People will ask questions about his previous wins, against the likes of Alberto Puello and his other
yeah,
world title win. But you
of
know,
course. And I'm one of these people who, if you fail a drugs test, it doesn't just put a question mark against your last fight, it puts a question mark against every fight you've had. Jarrell Miller, Conor Ben being two examples, two men who had good KO percentages. And then when you look at Matias, one of the biggest KO percentages in world boxing, you now have to question everything. In my opinion, you really do.
yeah, absolutely. It puts, I think, a lot of boxing fans will be the same. Now, it puts a question mark, it puts a spotlight over the whole career, to be quite honest with you now. But as I say, it is kind of still developing. This, it will be interesting to see how this plays out. Before we kind of wrap up, I want to kind of pose a question to you about Dalton Smith. If this is a case of Subriel Matias getting stripped of his title, people will ask what's next for Dalton Smith? Will he get awarded the world title or another kind of interesting scenario that I wanted to kind of pose to you. The WBC interim champion at the minute is Pitbull Cruz, and of course he has a big fight coming up in a couple of weeks now against Lamont Roach for that title. Could you see kind of a scenario where the Cruz Roach fight now doesn't happen, and
Yeah.
Pitbull Cruz could step in now to face Dalton Smith for the full world title on January 10th.
Yeah, look, it's a messy situation, isn't it? I would like to see that happen, but then I feel like that's not fair on Lamont Roach, who was training for that fight. And that fight's only 4 weeks away. So at the same time, I don't really want to see Dalton Smith just become world champion now. I feel like that definitely could happen. We've seen a situation with Fabio Warley this week where he has just kind of been awarded it when with Usyk vacating when he could have won the title in the ring 3 weeks ago against Joseph Parker or just be fighting for it in his next fight. So I hope that doesn't happen because I don't think you should win a world title that way. So it's a messy situation. It's one of those where if you're in those top 10 rankings in the WBC, you probably get to the gym tomorrow morning because you could be the one getting called up. There's so many things that could happen here. Two things I would say now. If Adam Azim hadn't just fought, you never know. I'm not saying it would happen, but you never know. Maybe it could have maybe all of a sudden that fight could look really likely for the WBC title. Really, if there was a way that Albert Puello could be ready for January the 10th, that's the fight I would want to see. Someone who, in my opinion, is unfortunate to some people thought was unfortunate to lose that fight against Matias, and as we've said, was that there's now a question mark against Matias in that fight as well. So, out of everyone, that's who I would like to see face Dalton Smith on January the 10th, and I hope it's January the 10th, just because Dalton Smith shouldn't have to rearrange things and delay things just because Matias has failed a drugs test.
Yeah, very true. Even though he is the interim champion, Lamont Roach deserves a big opportunity after getting messed around with the whole Tank Davis situation as well. But yeah, Alberto Puello, that's another name that I was going to ask you. That's another great show. He'll feel aggrieved now hearing this news
Yeah.
as well as Dalton Smith. I hope he's been in the gym. I hope he's staying ready because he doesn't, that phone very well could ring now. Just quickly before we wrap up on that fight. If that does happen and it's a great fight, I agree. I'd love to see that fight for the WBC title. Who would you pick there, Smith or Puel?
I would edge towards Pielo. Yeah, yeah. I think Dalton Smith's quality. Um, I just it's a tough one, but I'd edge towards Puello if he can have the right amount of preparation. I'm a big fan of Dalton Smith, but I'm not kind of convinced he's maybe kind of had enough fights at a certain level before fighting for a WBC title against a Subriel Matias or Puello instead. But yes, it's a tough one. It's a really tough one. But hopefully that's the fight we see. You never know.
Yeah, hopefully it is. And for Dalton Smith, it's a completely different style that you'd have to prepare for too. So you have to take that into account. But it would be such a fan-friendly fight, and hopefully Dalton Smith gets his deserved opportunity on January 10th. Whether that be against the Cruz or a Puello or somebody else. But I also agree with what you said. Getting given the world title, as you said, we've just seen it with Fabio Wardley. It shouldn't be the case, to be honest with you. And it'll get you some stick from boxing fans as well. Who'll say you never won that title, but yeah, hopefully he gets his opportunity. But yeah, that was just myself and Elliot giving our reaction to this evening's big breaking news that Subriel Matias has tested positive for the performance-enhancing drug Ostarine, of course, WBC super lightweight champion, ahead of his big fight that now looks likely to be scrapped, although it's still developing, still an early, story. We'll see what happens in the next few days regarding that. But yeah, huge disappointing breaking news this evening. Let us know your thoughts on this. What do you think of this? Should Matthias be stripped? And what is next for Dalton Smith? Will he get that chance? Let us know. Get involved down below in the comments. And please, as always, don't forget to drop a like on the video first of all. Subscribe to the channel if you're not doing so already at ESBR Boxing. And follow us on all social media. Always great content on a regular basis. Elliot, it was a pleasure talking to you. Take care.
Thanks. Now.